This guy was one of my big heroes growing up and one of my first non-Canadian heroes. I was a big fan of the Montreal Alouettes and the Montreal Canadiens back in the day. Obviously, a lot of Canadians on those teams. But when I saw this guy pitch, I said to myself, with his great mustache and his great style, he's going to be part of my life for a long while. Now, this is well before I became a Reggie Jackson fan, but Rollie Fingers, boys, 50 years ago against the Mets and later on against the Dodgers, I fell in love with him. Now, why I fell in love with him is this. He's considered the first modern relief pitcher. Now, a little bit of background here. He came to the A's after refusing a contract with the Dodgers, moved up through the system, became a starting pitcher, but it's getting whacked like crazy. Decided to put him to bullpen, and the rest is history. He won 5 straight division titles in 71 to 75, 3 straight World Series, and he eventually went on to great success with San Diego and the Milwaukee Brewers, a money reliever for sure. Now, when Fingers first reached the major leagues, the role of relief pitchers was limited, as starters rarely left games without holding a lead, but a squad's offense increased following the 68 season, and especially with the American League's introduction of the DH in 73. Managers became more willing to replace starters in late innings with a lead in order to forestall any late rallies by opponents. Now, throughout the 60s, both leagues' annual saves leaders tended towards saves totals of 20 to 25, as few pitchers remained in a role more than 2 or 3 years, with significant exceptions such as Roy Face and knuckleballer the great Hoyt Wilhelm. But in the 70s, in an era allowing for greater opportunities for closers than had previously been available, Fingers' excellence in relief allowed him to gradually increase his annual saves totals past with the magic number of 30. In 80, he broke Wilhelm's record of 227 saves, and he eventually finished with 341, a record that stood until Jeff Reardon passed it in 92. Now, Fingers is regarded again as a pioneer of modern relief pitching, defining the role of the closer for years to come. As had generally been true in baseball through the 60s, Fingers was moved to the bullpen, eventually to his role as a closer because of his struggles with starting. Before Fingers' time, a former starter's renewed success in the bullpen led back to a spot in the starting rotation. However, with the successes of Fingers and contemporaries such as Sparky Lyle and Goose Gossage, it has been widely accepted that an excellent pitcher might actually prove a greater benefit to his team as a closer than a third or fourth starter. Gossage, for example, was moved to the starting rotation after first serving as a reliever for a few seasons. As a starter, he pitched 17 complete games, but was clobbered and eventually was moved back to the bullpen permanently. This was with, of course, the White Sox. As a result, later teams have been more willing to move successful starters, notably Dennis Eckersley, Dave Righetti, and John Smoltz, to the permanent role of closer with no plans to bring them back to the rotation. Smoltz bucked that trend, but successfully returned to rotation in 2005. Now, the big marquee was 2006, when Bruce Sutter became the first pitcher in baseball history, elected to the Hall of Fame, who never started a game in his major league career. Now, because Fingers was sometimes a middle reliever back in the day, he could give you 2 to 4 innings depending on his myriad of pitchers was working. Now, if you look at the YouTubes, especially of the 1974 against the Dodgers had a very diverse lineup. When Fingers would come in, you would see he was a thinking man's pitcher, but he was so physically attractive with his mustache and that beautiful A's togs, whether it be yellow or white or golden or green or whatever. It was distracting because he may have looked like a barbershop quartet member, but he threw massive shit like nobody could hit it. The greatest compliment that any player got in my old baseball league, Rescue Innovative Baseball League, is a pitcher for the Dalhousie Dodgers. I forget which one. He said he's got finger stuff, and some women in the audience had no idea what it was, but we used to call them fingers, not Raleigh fingers, but whatever. Now, as a card collector as well, one of the greatest moments I ever had was to finally get an autograph, on-card autograph of Rollie, because he meant so much to me as a poor kid growing up in Northern Brunswick. And especially with the A's on the Saturday afternoon games in French and the playoff games, we thought he was God. He was as popular in my family as Jean Beliveau and Maurice Richard and Sonny Wade and all the great Alouette and Expo players, later Gary Carter. But there was only one Rollie Fingers, and there's never been a replacement for him. One of the most dynamic players ever in Major League Baseball, because he was a hero to many. He had his mistakes in his pitching, but we never held it against him. And that's a short story of Rollie Fingers. If you like what we're doing here, give us a like, comment, and subscribe on our vintage Major League Baseball podcasts.